So we have our two blocks, which you can put one that side, one's going to go on the underside. What you'll notice here with this bench hook is that we've actually joined it with glue, but also with some doweling, and that just gives a bit of extra strength. So I've managed to find this spare piece of doweling in my shed. Don't worry if you don't have some doweling, because what I'll do is on the other side I won't use the doweling, but hopefully you'll see that it works just as well without the doweling. This is just a nice woodworking way to do it. Okay. The doweling I've got here is 4.5mm in diameter, so I have a 4.5mm drill bit here, because what we need to do is drill holes in both these pieces of wood for this doweling to go into. So when we're doing the drilling, I want to drill into both of these pieces of wood, and I only want to go so far. I don't want to go all the way through both pieces of wood. So I need to know somehow, or telling myself, how am I going to stop in the right place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use some masking tape just to mark on the drill bit where we need to stop. Just tear a small piece of masking tape off. What I'm going to do, I'll bring this a bit closer for you, is I'm going to put that drill bit down level with the bench. I'm just going to lift it ever so slightly, because we don't want to go all the way through. And then I'm going to wrap this around my drill bit, like so. Before I start, I'm just going to check this just to make sure I put it in the right place. So I've got my drill bit with a piece of masking tape. If I just put it beside my piece of wood, I'm going to stop drilling when that piece of masking tape touches the top of this piece of wood, and therefore I know the drill has gone far enough. So what I need to do is hold this in place. So the best way of doing that is with a clamp. Let's clamp this down. In the middle. So I need to put this into my drill. So I'm going to put the first piece just there. I'm going to drill left-handed so you can see what I'm doing. That's where I'm going to have one piece of doweling, so goggles go on. Make sure the drill's nice and vertical. Press the drill full speed. You don't need to push down too hard, just take your time. Just work your way into the wood, and you know as I get down towards where I need to stop, the masking tape actually clears all that sawdust away. When you're drilling with a drill bit, never stop the drill inside the piece of wood. Always drill back out, then you can stop your drill. The reason why you don't want to stop the drill inside the piece of wood is that what can happen is, even though these are made of metal, they are actually quite brittle, these drill bits, and they can tend to snap. So you drill in, drill out. Every now and then people think they're clever by drilling in and then putting in reverse to drill back out. But all that does is it just pushes the sawdust back in the hole. And we want to get all that sawdust out of the hole. There's one hole. Spin this round. It'll be harder for you to see now, but I'm going to just drill this side. There we go. Right, so I've got my doweling, which is going to go in that hole. However, I do need to cut this to the right length, and we know that it's roughly going down to the bottom of the piece of wood, so it doesn't matter if this doweling is slightly too long. So what I'm going to do is just measure the length of the doweling, the same thickness of both pieces of wood. Okay. As I say, will end up being a fraction too long, but we can adjust that later on. What I do need to do now is try and saw this piece of wood. And with a small piece of wood like this, if you use a normal handsaw, like this one here, with very big teeth, it tends to jump around on the piece of wood, which can either cut you or it can actually tear the wood. And if you look at this end, you can see that it's splintered, where I've probably used too big a saw in the past. So best not to use a saw with big teeth. You want a nice fine saw. So I've got a tenon saw here, which has got some nice smaller teeth on it. I'm going to put that in the vise. Oops, this way. Okay. Drag the saw back 3 times to give yourself a nice groove. As you'll notice, I'm actually going through this wood very quickly, so I'm going to keep going backwards just because it's nice and controlled. There's my one piece. What I need to do now is actually make another one. So, rather than having to measure it again using the blocks, I'm going to use my first piece as my measuring stick. Pencil goes on there, and now we can just cut this off. You'll notice I'm holding the piece of wood just to help it stop vibrating, because it's such a thin piece of wood, it will snap quite easily. You'll also notice I'm not trying to saw it too quickly. There we go. Just take your time. If you actually have a bench hook already, let me just show you how much easier it would be with a bench hook. Mark it there. If you have a bench hook, you just push it against that block, and then, like before, drag it back 3 times at the start, but then you can actually just saw nice and quickly. So as you can see, it was a lot quicker and a lot easier with a bench hook. So hopefully you can see why we do want to make one of these. Right, so I have my 2 little blocks now. What I'm going to do is just use a file just to smoothen those edges off. The main reason for this is to actually help it go into the holes. At this stage we only do one end, the end that we're going to push into our little block. There we go. Right. To help us with our gluing, and to help us with these pins, we're going to use some glue. I've got some wood glue here, made by Evo Stick. If you don't have any wood glue yourself, you're more than welcome just to use normal PVA. It's very similar, this just had a few extra additives in it to help it work better with the wood itself. So, right, I've just cleaned out the glue so we're ready to go. What you need to do is just make a small snail trail amount of glue all the way around your block. Don't need a huge amount, and then we can put it in place. What we need to do now is put our pins through these little holes here. You might need a mallet to help you just persuade those into the holes. So you don't need to hit it too hard. Gentle little taps just to help it go into that base piece. There we go. Right. 2 things you'll notice. Firstly, those pins are sticking out proud. That's because when we were drilling, we didn't drill the whole thickness of these 2 pieces of wood, but those pins were the thickness of the 2 pieces of wood, so they are slightly longer. That's not a problem, because what we can do is just file those off to make them the same height as our block of wood. The other thing you'll notice is some of the glue has oozed out the sides, so all you need to do is just lift the glue away. Notice when I'm doing it, I'm just trying to lift the glue off, I'm not smudging it along on the piece of wood. Once you've got some glue on your fingers, the best way to get rid of it, don't wipe on clothes or on your apron or anything, just put it into the middle of your hands and rub your hands together. The best part is, turns them into nice little bogies which will just rub off and then you can fall on the floor. Easy. There we go. Rub your hands together. There we go. Now, like I say, just need to file off the top of those little pins. Notice when I'm filing, I'm just always filing going forwards, do nice, steady, long strokes. There we go. Do the same with this one. Little bits off. And there we go. One end done. So it's in that the little block is level with the end of our base piece, what we call flush, and I've got a small groove either side. To do the other side, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to pretend that we don't have any doweling. So what I need to do is I'm just going to screw it into place. When it comes to finding the right screws, you want to make sure that your screw doesn't go through to the other side. So you want it going deep enough into this baseboard, but not so far that it might stick out the other side. So I'm going to use these gold screws. The ones I've got here are 3.5 times 30. Because the two pieces of wood themselves are 38 millimeters, 3.8 centimeters. So by using that length, it should bite into the baseboard enough, but not stick through the other side. What you do need to do is just have a look at your piece of wood and make sure, and just check that it's not too old. Sometimes when you've got a really old piece of wood, it can be dried out, and if you try and drill straight into a block of wood like this, it can tend to split the piece of wood. So what I'm going to do is just go and get a drill bit and then drill myself a pilot hole. Pilot hole is a guiding hole, and pilot hole should be just about the same size as the shaft of the screw, not the actual screw head, because those spiral parts are a fraction bigger than the shaft itself. So I want to make it that size there.